Certain aspects of life are considered universally true, such as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, or what goes up must come down. These are irrefutable facts. However, there are also colloquialisms that resonate with our understanding, even though they may not be entirely factual. One example is the adage, "Mother knows best." While it would be comforting to believe that all parents possess unwavering devotion to their children, this is not always the case. Sometimes, a mother's guidance can be woefully misguided.
Lori Vallow Daybell, the woman convicted of killing her 2 kids as well as conspiring to kill her current husband's late wife, was denied a new trial.
Chad Daybell appeared in an Idaho courtroom this morning as his triple murder trial is set to begin in 5 weeks.
911, where is your emergency? I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
I was going to murder him. I was going to kill him, like the scriptures say, like...
You went off to Hawaii and were dancing on the beach while your kids are in the ground?
Born in 1973 as Lori Noreen Cox in San Bernardino County, California, she was the second to youngest of a brood of 5 and raised in a devout Mormon home. Though beautiful and well-liked, Lori was rather unlucky in love. At just 19 years old, her first marriage to her high school sweetheart ended in divorce. Lori then relocated to Austin, Texas, and married again. This one lasted a bit longer, and the couple welcomed a son, Colby, in 1996, but ultimately went their separate ways by 1998. 3 years later, in 2001, Lori tried for a third time, marrying Joseph Ryan Jr. The pair welcomed a lively little girl named Tylee Ashlyn Ryan in 2002, but this was still not Lori's happily ever after. The couple divorced in 2005, and the split was far from amicable. 2 years later, after a supervised visit with his daughter, Joseph was attacked outside of his apartment complex by Lori's brother, Alex. He believed that Joseph was abusive to his sister and her children, though this has never been substantiated. Alex was later booked for aggravated assault and served 3 months in jail after pleading guilty. In 2006, Lori met and married Charles Vallow. At first, things seemed promising. Charles was love-struck, and though a lifelong Catholic, he readily converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints to please his new wife. After relocating to Arizona, things seemed tranquil for the Vallow family. The next big change came in 2013 when Charles and Lori adopted his great-nephew, Joshua Jackson, or JJ for short. He was welcomed into his new home, especially by his new big sister, Tylee. The following year, the Vallow family moved again to Kauai, Hawaii. While living there, Lori, still an avid member of the LDS Church, began reading the Standing in Holy Places series of novels by Chad Daybell, a fellow Mormon. The fictional books have a distinctly apocalyptic tone, largely centering around events that LDS theology prophecies will occur before the second coming of Jesus Christ. A native of Provo, Utah, Chad Guy Daybell was born in 1968. Like Lori, he too was raised in a Mormon household and married young. In 1990, at just 22 years old, he wed Tammy Douglas. However, unlike Lori, this marriage stuck. The pair had a growing family of 5 children, and Chad supported them through various odd jobs, including copy editing, grave digging, and original writing. In 2004, he founded Spring Creek Book Company and began self-publishing many of his fiction and nonfiction books. These works often employed LDS theology and imagery and were meant to appeal to a Mormon audience. Throughout the 2010s, as Chad's beliefs skewed more and more radical, he became convinced that the apocalypse was nigh. In 2015, the Daybell family moved to Rexburg, Idaho, after Chad claimed that a voice had told him to do so. Sometime between 2016 and 2017, the Vallows returned to Arizona, but Lori's behavior was changing. Her husband Charles noticed this and became increasingly worried about his family's well-being. His wife was shifting into more extreme beliefs, and he claimed that she threatened to kill him if he interfered with her God-given mission. This supposed mission was preparing for the second coming of Jesus Christ, and she joined a doomsday prepper group that focused on exactly that. This group, known as Preparing a People, held a meeting in the fall of 2018 in Utah, where Chad and Lori finally met. The pair connected instantly, with Chad claiming that they had been married in several previous lives. From there, it appeared that Chad and Lori communicated frequently, with Lori inviting him to her home on several occasions. At this point, Chad began explaining his religious philosophy to her, asserting that he had lived over 30 lives. He also ranked people by how light or dark they were based on their closeness to either Jesus or Satan. The two also discussed the existence of zombies, which, in their philosophy, were people whose souls were replaced by evil spirits. The only way, they said, to end the zombie was to kill the infected person's body. Several months before their fateful meeting at the Preparing a People conference, Joseph Ryan, Lori's third husband and the biological father of her daughter Tylee, suddenly died. He had relocated from Texas to Arizona to maintain his relationship with his daughter, and in April 2018 was found dead in his Phoenix apartment home. Though he had been a victim of violence at the hands of Lori's brother and remained fearful for his safety, his death was found to be of natural causes. He apparently suffered a heart attack before passing away at the age of 59. Audio recordings of Lori were captured a few months after his demise, referencing her animosity towards Joseph, stating, quote, "I was going to murder him. I was going to kill him, like the scriptures say." It is unclear when a physical relationship between Lori and Chad began, but their long-distance affair got more and more troublesome, and soon Lori began referring to her husband and children as zombies. Charles, for one, had finally had enough and filed for divorce in February 2019. He believed Lori had come unglued and contacted authorities saying his wife had threatened his life, and he was concerned for his safety, the safety of his children, and his wife's mental health. However, Lori was deemed by the police to still be competent at the time, and Charles's fears fell on deaf ears. On the morning of July 11, 2019, Charles arrived at Lori's residence to take JJ to school. An altercation ensued between Charles and Lori's brother Alex that ended with a mortal gunshot wound to Charles's chest.
911, where is your emergency? I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
Okay, let me get the medics on the phone. And is he hurt or is he alive or?
Yeah, there's blood. He's not moving.
How long ago did this happen?
A couple of minutes.
Fire department, what is the address of the emergency? Okay, is he awake and responsive or unconscious?
Unconscious.
Okay, is he breathing?
I can't tell.
Okay, are you willing to go over to him and check?
Sure.
Okay, do you just let me know if you see his chest going up and down? How old is he?
It's not moving. He's 60.
Okay, and are you wanting to start CPR?
No, I don't know how to do that.
I can walk you through it.
Okay.
And was he armed also, or just you, or what happened there?
Yeah, he came at me with a bat.
He's what, married to your sister? Where is she?
Correct. No, I think she's taking her son to school.
Okay.
Alex alleged that Charles had become violent towards his sister, and the shooting was in self-defense. Statements from Lori and Tylee backed up these events, and Alex was never arrested or charged for the slaying.
I know Lori's your first name, right?
Yeah.
L-A-U-R?
L-O-R-I.
Okay. And then what's your last name?
Vallow. V-A-L-L-O-W.
Start where you think it makes the most sense.
Okay. So, I told you we had decided to separate or whatever, so he's like, well, I'll pay for a house for you and for JJ and whatever, because he's all about JJ. He's never about Tylee, but he's all about JJ. Because we adopted him together. He's his great nephew. We adopted him as a baby. But it's all these threats on my phone all the time, you know, like whatever, all these things. He doesn't want a divorce, but I don't like him and don't want to deal with him, so that's just how it is. So he travels for business, so he went back to the Houston house, and he's like, I'm coming on Wednesday night. and I'm going to come pick up JJ and take him to school Thursday, pick him up Thursday, take him Friday, whatever. And I said, Casey wanted to come to the house. And I said, you can't come stay at this house because you can't get along with Tylee. She's a minor, and she has to live here.
Yeah.
So, because he gets in huge fights up there.
Okay.
And she hates him. And he came over in the morning, and he's like banging on the door. I'm like, oh great, here we go, you know. And I was just gonna be nice. I was just gonna be nice as possible. And I had JJ stuff all ready for school. And so, and then he was just being real smirky and real like jerky, you know, to me. And I was like ignoring him, whatever. And so he was like,
and your brother lives there with you?
No.
Okay.
He had stayed with me last night because I was worried he was going to come over and cause trouble with me.
Okay.
And just wanted someone else there, like my brother there, because I trust my brother. And
so he initially left with the backpack and with JJ?
And so he put them in the car,
in
the driveway, and then he came back in. Right? So I kissed JJ goodbye. He came back in, and his phone was on the counter, and I had his phone. And he was like, giving me my phone, and I was like, why don't you show me your text that you've been texting, blah, 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 you know, whatever.
So this morning he comes back in and...
He comes back in, I wouldn't give him his phone. He was screaming at me to give him his phone. He was very worried about whatever was on his text that he did not want me to see. And so I was just holding it there, and he was screaming at me. And I was kind of walking around the house with it, so he couldn't get it. He's like reaching for it and stuff like that. And so Tylee came out of her room upset, and she had a bat, and she told him to leave her mother alone, like, right? Then my brother heard all the commotion because he was in there in bed, and so he came out into the main room, and he was screaming, and he was super upset and whatever, and he was yelling at Tylee, don't you hit me with that bat, and blah, blah, blah. And so Tylee, I guess, I don't know if she swung at him or what, but he like grabbed the bat from Tylee and then went to like hit Tylee with the bat. And I was right there, and they were right there, and my brother grabbed him from behind, like just to stop him from hitting Tylee. Just like that, like backwards, almost in one arm.
Like he was swinging, swinging it backwards? He would have done like
he would have swung it backwards at me, not frontwards.
Okay, yeah.
He was a professional baseball player.
Okay.
So it wasn't a good idea for Tylee to get out of that.
Probably not the.
I mean, he played semi-pro when he was young.
Yeah.
But and we were all right there in that room, except for the kids had been outside by that time, and I heard the gunshot. And
so I know this is going to kind of sound like kind of a silly question because it's super broad, but can you basically tell me what happened today? And you can start at whatever place makes sense for you.
So I woke up probably around like 7:50, I want to say, because I heard yelling. I don't even know where, but I immediately like jumped up, and I have a baseball bat because when I was living at my uncle's by myself, I just wanted something to like feel safer, and I'm not old enough to get like pepper spray or anything, so I was like, okay, I'll get a baseball bat. So yeah, I immediately just jumped up and I grabbed my baseball bat and I opened the door, and it was my stepdad, you know, outside the doorway, and then my uncle kind of in the doorway, and then I could hear my mom behind him, and he was just screaming at both of them, like, I don't even know what he was saying, because honestly I was just too, like wired, I guess. So I told him to take a few steps back.
When you said they were yelling, who was yelling?
It was mostly my stepdad.
Okay.
Well, he was really the only one, like, yelling. My mom was kind of, like, responding, but I honestly couldn't tell you what they were saying. It was kind of just, like, all jumbled up in my head. My uncle kind of, like, I saw him take a step back, so my uncle, I think, grabbed him and kind of took him back so he couldn't, like, do anything. And so my mom said to go with JJ, and so I ran out the door, and then I kind of just stood there with my little brother, and then eventually my mom came out, and then we left from there.
Okay.
I just kind of asked her, like, because I heard a noise, which I know what it was now, but it sounded like, because I knew that the baseball bat was in there, it sounded like someone, like, took it and hit it really hard against the floor.
Okay.
2 months after Charles's demise, Lori, Alex, Tylee, and JJ all relocated to Rexburg, Idaho, the hometown of the Daybell family. Lori persisted with calling her children zombies, especially Tylee, who Chad believed to have a very dark spiritual rating. On September 8th, Lori and Alex took both of the kids to Yellowstone Park. It should have been a fun day in one of America's greatest national parks, and perhaps it was. Sadly, it was also the last time that there was any proof of life for 16-year-old Tylee. Though it was the beginning of the school year in a new town, she was never enrolled in a local high school and was never seen again. The next day, Alex spent over 2 hours on Chad Daybell's land near the location of the family's pet cemetery. Chad also texted his wife, Tammy, to let her know that he had shot and killed a raccoon, disposing of it on the family's animal burial ground. A couple of weeks later, on September 22nd, 7-year-old JJ was last seen at his elementary school in Rexburg. The school received an email from Lori stating that JJ was going to live with his grandparents in Louisiana, and when the administration followed up about where to send his academic records, Lori changed her tune, stating that she would be homeschooling him instead. Once again the next day, Alex spent several hours on Chad Daybell's land. Lori also told her friends Melanie and David that JJ was a zombie who had to be taken away. Up until this point, Chad's wife, 49-year-old Tammy Daybell, had been largely left alone by the drama swirling in her husband's life. It is unclear how much she knew about his extramarital affair, but she at least had some suspicions. On October 9th, she was attacked in her driveway by a masked man armed with a paintball gun. She was unharmed, though likely rattled by the encounter. However, 10 days later, on October 19th, she passed away in her sleep. At first, it was believed to be of natural causes, and Chad mentioned that she had gone to bed the night before with a terrible cough. She was quickly buried, and the family requested no autopsy. If Chad mourned his late wife, he had a strange way of showing it, as he and Lori jetted off to Hawaii. On November 5th, the pair celebrated their wedding on a Hawaiian beach while Kay and Larry Woodcock, JJ's grandparents, tried desperately to contact either their grandson or his sister Tylee. An official investigation was launched later that month, but the series of strange events did not stop there. Alex, Lori's brother, also passed away the following month on December 11th. He allegedly died of natural causes, and post-mortem examinations found a large blood clot in his lungs as well as the presence of Narcan, a drug administered to counteract overdoses. One day after Alex's death, Tammy Daybell's body was exhumed, and an autopsy was conducted. Bruising that was consistent with being restrained, and evidence of death by asphyxiation was established. As 2020 dawned, authorities carried out their first search of the Daybell property, though Chad and Lori remained in Hawaii.
Hi.
This is all you can serve.
Do you have any questions regarding that?
So it is 14:39 hours on January 25th.
Any questions?
You have any questions for that? No? Okay.
All right, have a nice day.
Have a nice day.
Lori was then notified that she had until January 30th to present her children. When this day came and went with no sign of Tylee or JJ, Lori was arrested and extradited to Idaho on charges of child abandonment and desertion. For the ensuing months, neither Lori nor Chad would answer the burning question on everyone's minds. Just where were Tylee and JJ? Searches of the Daybell property continued without much luck, until June 9th. Sadly, the bodies of both children were found near the Daybell's pet cemetery. Tylee's remains had been dismembered and burned, while JJ's body was found wrapped in duct tape and plastic. At this point, Chad was arrested, and both he and Lori were charged with destruction and concealment of evidence. It took just under a year, but finally, on May 24, 2021, Lori and Chad were charged with the murders of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. They both faced first-degree murder charges, conspiracy, and grand theft for the deaths of Tylee and JJ, as well as conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy. Chad was also specifically charged with the first-degree murder of his late wife. The state of Arizona further charged Lori with conspiracy to murder Charles Vallow, her late fourth husband. Deemed unfit to stand trial, Lori was booked into a psychiatric facility a few days later. By October of the following year, Lori was now thought competent to stand trial. Even so, she refused to enter a plea at her arraignment for the murders of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. As a result, the judge entered a plea of not guilty on her behalf. Her trial began in April 2023, and though the state of Idaho had initially thought to seek the death penalty, this potential was removed thanks to her precarious mental state.
I would like to start by quoting John from the New Testament in the Bible. In John chapter 8, verse 7, Jesus says, "He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." Jesus knows me, and Jesus understands me. I mourn with all of you who mourn my children and Tammy. Jesus Christ knows the truth of what happened here. Because of these communications, I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world. Because of my communications with my friend Tammy Daybell, I know that she is also very happy and extremely busy. I have always mourned the loss of my loved ones, and I have lost many in this mortal world. Tylee has visited me. She is happy and very busy. Tylee is free now from all the pains of her life. One of the times that Tylee came to me as a spirit after she died, she commanded me, and she said to me, "Stop worrying, Mom. We are fine." She knows how I worry and how I miss her. The first time JJ visited me after he passed away, he put his arm around me and he said to me, "You didn't do anything wrong, Mom. I love you, and I know you loved me every minute of my life."
Nevertheless, she was ultimately found guilty of the murders of her children and of the conspiracy to murder Tammy. Her lawyers made a last-ditch effort to save her, blaming everything on her affair partner and now husband, Chad, but this was unconvincing to the jury. She was handed multiple life sentences with no possibility of parole.
You are sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole.
Now a resident of the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center in Idaho, Lori still faces charges in Arizona. The state began the extradition process in August 2023. It is unclear when she will stand trial for those charges. As for Chad Daybell, his day in court is set for April 1st, 2024. Unlike Lori, he may still face the death penalty. He has pled not guilty and is currently held in the Fremont County Jail. Was Lori a superstar mom poisoned by the radical ideology of Chad Daybell? Or was she a poisonous siren leading him astray from his loyal wife and family? No matter the narrative, at least 3 people were murdered, and 2 of them were children. In the end, a husband turned on his wife, and a mother turned on her kids. These 2 individuals weaponized religion as a way to justify their own heinous and selfish acts that started with infidelity and ended with murder. Stay tuned for more content like this. Thanks for watching.